With the Sea of Thieves Community Direct wrapping up, a lot of players were overall disappointed with the content zone, with minimal new additions announced, although one stuck out to me: the official Sea of Thieves limited commercial use guidelines. As a player who enjoys creating fan art of the game and other content outside of the game, I decided to look into them. After a heavy reviewing of these guidelines for multiple days, I've come to the conclusion these guidelines are extremely negative for the content creation space. These guidelines are too brief, hide information, restricts external criticism, plagiarizes and limits merchandise inspired by SWOT to be distributed. Overall, these guidelines are extremely anti-consumer and creator. Before I start ripping into these guidelines, I should mention these guidelines are brought to us by both Rare and Microsoft. Who's to blame for these poorly written guidelines is messy. We don't know exactly who made them. For the sake of this video, I will be just referring it to Rare, even though Microsoft is definitely a part of this somehow. The commercial uses guidelines consists of these segments: general, a brief explanation of these guidelines; definitions, outlining the key terms that will be allowed to use in the document; essential requirements, the requirements that cannot be breached; all uses, despite the name, explains who has the right to what, and how to contact Rare support for further questions. What could go wrong? Naming guidelines, what you're allowed and not allowed to name your content. Handcrafted products, the limited distribution and earnings of both handcrafted and factory-made products. To add to this, the Sea of Thieves commercial usage guidelines take heavy inspiration from Minecraft's usage guidelines, at times ripping whole segments word for word. This could be Microsoft copying them over for SWOT, or Rare plagiarizing them. There's no way to tell. For the sake of this video, I will be making comparisons between Sea of Thieves' user commercial guidelines and Minecraft's. As I said earlier, these guidelines are extremely brief. With this lack of information, content creators will interpret this information differently. There is borderline nothing to do with SWOT in videos, streams, or screenshots, unlike Minecraft's guidelines. This missing information leaves a massive grey area on what can and can't be done with SWOT. You might be thinking, but since Rare hasn't told us any restrictions from SWOT gameplay, there's no restrictions, right? Technically, yes, but should there be? Videos that advertise paid-for alliance servers or cheats, I feel personally would breach guidelines like this. And I would also say they would count as commercial exploitation of the brand, but nothing is said about it. On the other side of the coin, what if the scenario is covered by the guidelines, but this information is just hidden? This would basically mean Rare is enforcing guidelines to creators unfairly, and the creators can't do anything about it. Minecraft's guidelines are currently in legal trouble due to hiding information from its creators, and if Rare decides to enforce any unlisted guidelines, they could end up in a similar predicament. Luckily, Rare allows us to get some clarity on these guidelines by contacting our support team, but this shouldn't be needed at all. All this information should be clearly yet precisely told to us creators, and I'll get into the support team later. Under Handcrafted Products, Rare outlines what you can and can't use the SWOT assets for. I understand if someone is ripping game files and selling merch of it, actions should be taken, but this section paints a different picture. Let's read out what Rare considers to be a unique design. A unique design is something that adds enough personal creativity to make the work distinctive and original, rather than just pulling assets directly from the game, making only minor changes. For example, you can't put Sea of Thieves key art or a screenshot from the game on a product, but you could create original fan art or a cosplay prop inspired by your adventures on Sea of Thieves and sell limited quantities of it, as long as it complies with the other requirements. I can somewhat reason with screenshots. People shouldn't be selling images of landmarks or iconic locations in the game with nothing extra to add to it. I feel the only time this would be acceptable is if the creator takes a screenshot that adds something distinctly theirs to it, such as their pirate. On the other hand, fan art? Fan art shouldn't be a word used in guidelines like this. As a term, it's way too broad. Plus, what counts as fan art for SWOT, unlike other IPs like Minecraft, Pokemon, or other pirate media such as One Piece? A large majority of SWOT's creatures and concepts are just generic pirate stuff. If I'm a large SWOT content creator and I commission someone to draw a skeleton crew manning a pirate ship, does that count? Yes, it takes inspiration from SWOT, as the guidelines outline, fan art or cosplay props inspired by your adventures on Sea of Thieves, but it's not unique to SWOT. So compared to Minecraft again, a lot of YouTubers started creating Minecraft-inspired merch with Mojang's designs put into fan art and sold without issue. With SWOT, there's no examples listed either, so it's hard to tell what's crossing a line that honestly shouldn't even be in place. When I was getting into the technical side of this fan art debate, a problem arose, and the reason I wanted to make this into a video. Does our uniquely generated pirate character sort gives us at the start of the game abide by these guidelines? Almost every single sort content creator uses their Sea of Thieves pirate as the mascot of their channel, and in extension most likely has merch designs of them, which will be affected by these guidelines if they get put in place. This question should have a simple answer. No, Rare shouldn't be able to enforce this. Let me give a really brief example. Imagine I go to an AI image generator and typed in pirate character. The company generating the image doesn't own the rights to them. They're free to the public, an extension the person who made them. AI swap aside, Sea of Thieves has a similar generation process, excluding other generative AI aspects. A pirate is generated based on a list of attributes that makes it uniquely yours. If I started a Sea of Thieves YouTube channel today, and I used my pirate as the mascot, no one else would have seen it before. The clothing choices, the hours spent re-rolling it till I got a design that fits, it's mine, and it will always be a part of my brand as a content creator. The fact this is even a question we have to ask is overall because of the briefness of this document. At least I can get some clarity from the support team, right? I contacted Sea of Thieves regarding my Sea of Thieves Pirates ownership. My request was sent to a high support ticket, and all I got back was this response. Thank you for contacting us about our limited commercial uses guidelines. These guidelines outline what we currently consider to be commercial use. We are unable to advise on individual inquiries. If a business commercializes Sea of Thieves beyond these guidelines, Microsoft reserves the right to take action. What is the point of having a support team if they can't answer individual questions? Why does the guideline say to its creators to get permission for uncertain cases when the support team cannot answer them? Also, in the document it outlines for creators to contact them if they do have any questions or inquiries about specific grey areas they might have. Also, this means the guidelines lie to the creator about transparency, which is extremely anti-consumer and extension creator. If Rare support won't follow these guidelines, why should we? Anyway, here's a few more things I wanted to mention but weren't big enough for their own section. The general section is extremely short, being 2 sentences. In essential requirements, they discuss account terms and EULA, which I couldn't directly find, and it might be because I copied it from Minecraft. Contacting support section instructions are just completely a lie, and I don't know why they're in there if they're just not gonna abide by them. The way they explain selling stuff is extremely complicated. To give them credit, this is just something straight copied from the Minecraft one as well. In naming guidelines, they reference Sea of Thieves to the podcast as something and not to name your content, which could be due to a very obvious joke podcast channel being made recently. Like, come on, you're not telling me that's official. Rare in the community direct outlines in these guidelines that it will help Etsy sellers when the guidelines negatively affect them. And please note, we reserve the rights to change our mind at any time. Is a crazy line from mandated guidelines. In this section of the document, they should outline what harmful means, because it could mean anything. It could count for this video. I understand Rare doesn't want the sort IP to exploit it for income, especially by bigger companies, but the way these guidelines are written sounds more like they want to micromanage every single smaller creator. Overall, Rare needs to fix these guidelines, be more transparent about them, and not enforce them in the form they are now, or else it'll mess up a lot of stuff. In extension, if I fucked anything up in this video, or if anyone in the community has experienced anything similar to this, or Rare actually enforcing this in any sort of cases, I'll have a pinned comment about stuff across those lines. If there isn't one, I'm lazy.